What's up, guys? This is part 2 on the 1996 Jeep Cherokee project. Um, as you can see, I got the front of the Jeep jacked up again. I know I just put the axle in there, but I think I mentioned in the last part that I was hearing a little bit of noise coming from the front end. So I don't know if it's gear noise or carrier bearing noise or wheel bearing noise. So easiest thing and the first thing to do is do the wheel bearings, because this axle was sitting in the junkyard for who knows how long. I'm sure it has plenty of miles on it. Probably use them anyways, so I went ahead and ordered a set of wheel bearings for it, and that's what I'm going to try to do right now. I don't think it's going to be too easy. The threads on the outer axle shafts here look pretty beat up, so I may even have to end up getting new axle shafts on the outside. There are these little outer pieces. So in theory, if you're going to replace the front wheel bearings on a Jeep Cherokee like this, mine's 96 like I said, but I think most of them are pretty much the same within the XJ years. It's pretty much straightforward in theory. You just take the wheel off, and you got to take your caliper off and the rotor, and you have to take off this little retaining nut, and there's a little washer behind it that puts pressure on your axle nut, and then you got to take your big axle nut off, and then you can undo the 3 bolts that hold the wheel bearing assembly on, because it's not like wheel bearing like the rear that you can replace just the wheel bearing. It's like a whole hub assembly. You have to take that whole thing off and just put a new one on. So it's pretty easy, but like I said, mine, the threads on this outer axle shaft are pretty bad. So I'm thinking it's going to be kind of a pain in the butt. So got the wheel off, and I'm going to actually leave the caliper on for a minute to see if it puts a little more tension on the wheel. I'm probably going to have to end up putting some kind of bar in here to hold the wheel from, or to hold the hub from spinning when I try to get this nut off. But I'm going to go ahead and take the cotter pin off and take this little retaining nut off. Okay, so here's just a close-up of what I'm doing here. It's the cotter pin there in the center, and that retaining nut, and then behind that is the actual axle nut. Well, guys, it came off of there, and I didn't expect it to be that easy at all. As you can see, I put the bar in here just to keep the hub from spinning, and I got this big breaker bar on there, and I kind of felt it, and it felt super tight, but went and got the old impact, put her on there, and dang thing came right off. There's the nut, and there's that retaining nut and retaining spring I was talking about that goes on the outside. So now I just got to take the caliper off and rotor, and I should be able to unbolt the hub, pull it off. And I know the hub's going to come off pretty easy because I just had them off and I put anti-seize all around it. It's only been like a week, so sometimes you have to kind of beat on them to get them separated from the knuckle, but mine should come off pretty easy. So caliper bolt should be 13 millimeter. Well, my bolts are actually 12 millimeter for some reason. The rotor. Now the hub bolts themselves are 13 millimeter, and you're going to need a 12-point socket for that. And when I took these off the first time, they were tight and had to use impact on them. Okay guys, you got the bolts off of here, and now you just gotta kind of hammer it off. And I am gonna point out that it's a lot easier working on this axle when it's outside the truck, but most people aren't gonna be able to do that, and it's perfectly fine that you can do it in the truck too. Alright, you got it off. Alright guys, so I'm putting the new hub wheel bearing assembly on, and I'm getting ready to torque my bolts down. The hub bolts are 75 foot-pounds, and the axle nut is 175 foot-pounds. So I'm going to get those all torqued up. I actually used the bolts from my two-wheel drive axle because they were a little bit better. Put the four-wheel drive ones over here. And I'm also going to use the two-wheel drive retaining clips because they're less rusty. Same thing, just better part. So I'm gonna go ahead and torque these nuts up, or these bolts up. Alright guys, so I got the wheel bearings on, and I got everything torqued down but the axle nuts, and I got those to about 150 foot-pounds, but that's as far as my torque wrench that I have here at the house would go up to. The good one that goes up to like 200 some foot-pounds, my brother has it at work, so he's gonna bring it home tonight, and I'm gonna finish torquing those down to 175 foot-pounds. Then I can put the brakes back on, put the wheels back on, and take it for a test drive and see if I fix that noise, which hopefully I did. So for now, I'm going to be working on another little project related to the four-wheel drive, obviously, and that is trying to get my shifter assembly put in the Jeep. So this is the one that I scavenged off of that white Cherokee, the 96 that I got the Dana 30 from at the junkyard. Got the whole bracket assembly there. Didn't get any of the shifter arms, the linkage, but got the little bracket assembly, and there's also another little bracket assembly that goes along the transmission tunnel, and I thought I grabbed that, but I don't know what I did with it, so I'm going to have to look around for that, and if I find it, I'll put it in. But let me just show you a little bit of what I've got going on here. So as you can see, I've already got the console plastics removed. It was actually easier than I thought. And if we take a look in here, you'll see that Jeep was actually nice enough to leave us a hole right where the shifter is going to go, and I believe that these holes are also going to line up too. I don't see why they wouldn't. So here's the little block off plate that was on there from the factory. Just goes right there. You take that off. I had to cut the carpet back just a little bit here. Most of this is going to get covered up by the console plastics anyways, but cut it open just a little bit so I can get to these bolts. Took the plate off, and that four-wheel drive shifter should pop right in there, screw down, and then I can hook my plastics back up, and when I get the linkage, I can hook the linkage back up on the bottom. And that other bracket that I was talking about, I think there's holes for it down here too. It looks like these little rubber grommets here. Looks like I can just take those out, and that little bracket will bolt right up in there too. So if I find it, then I'll get it. I don't really want to cut the carpet down that far, so might have to see what I can do there. But it's pretty cool that, you know, Jeep left the holes on the two-wheel drive model. So I'm gonna go ahead and see if I can bolt that shifter up in here. Okay, so I got the shifter in there, and the holes almost lined up, not quite. So they actually had some kind of little nutserts in the transmission tunnel here in the metal. So instead of trying to take those out and relocate them, since it was so close, I just decided to drill out the holes in the bracket just a little bit, just to give me a little more play. And I got them all lined up, and they're all tight. And so now I got a shifter. It's pretty cool. So now I'm just gonna see if I can ease my plastics back on, put everything back together. And oh, actually, before I do that, I probably should get this bracket down here. I almost forgot about that. So I'll have to see if I can find that bracket. But I got my shifter in. It's pretty cool. Little things start adding up. One of these days, this is gonna be four-wheel drive, man. It's gonna be awesome. Alright, so I'm just putting my console back together. As you can see, I've already started. So basically, first you're going to put this piece of plastic here. It's a vent tube that runs the AC from the front, runs along the bottom here, underneath your center console, and then out the back. Two vents back here. See if I can show you that. Yeah, down there. Those two vents down there. It has two ports. So that sits underneath there. Just sits on the carpet. And then you put this main brown piece of plastic here. Yours is obviously maybe going to be a different color. And you've got two screws in the bottom of your console here. You put those in. They go into metal brackets that stick up from the floor, from the transmission tunnel there. And once you get those tightened down, then you can go ahead and put the black piece in that covers up all your shifter stuff here. And so I'm going to go ahead and do that. This center piece here is a little tricky to get in and out because it has to slip over the parking brake lever here. So there may be a better way to do it, but this worked for me, and I just kind of slid it up. I lifted the parking brake up, so engage the parking brake, and then you can kind of pull it back to where it's as far down on the groove there as it'll go. And then you can just kind of bend this front piece up and get it past all of your dash here, and it will slip in and out, but you have to be gentle so you don't break anything. So that's what I did. I just wanted to mention that real quick because it is a little tricky. So once you get the middle piece in, you've got 4 screws holding that in place. You got 1, 2 up here right in front of the center console compartment, and then you've got 2 down here by the shifter lever. So you got 1 here and 1 over here.